Hello, everyone. My name is Niharika, and I would like to extend a warm personal welcome to the launch of the Theory of Learning podcast. I will be your host this evening, and it's great to connect with all of you. I believe it or not, I can really feel the buzz, the energy, the excitement. It's palatable. And it's perhaps because all of us are lifelong learners, and there's a common thread that binds us all together. It's the common love for learning and the common love and quest for teaching and achieving results with our students. We all make an effort on a daily basis, not only to touch, but also to transform the lives of our students, our trainees, and anyone that we really come in contact with, even our colleagues. A little bit about myself before we get started. I'm part of the Vadhwani Global University, wherein I take care of the digital learning tools. Though I started my career with banking, the world of teaching and training always held a certain lure. And thankfully, after I became a mom, I decided that I really need to listen to this calling of the heart. I then started working my way into this field of learning and development. I found any opportunity and grabbed onto it to teach and train. This took me to several colleges and also becoming a part of a performance consulting company before I finally joined Vadhwani Foundation. The stint here has opened up the world of digital learning for me. And today I work with Paco, who heads Vadhwani Global University. And those of you who have interacted with him will know that it means that there is no place for complacency and that we need to challenge the status quo on a daily basis. Well, let's get back to this very, very exciting podcast. So, all of you know that those of you who stay to the end of this live event will get a very special surprise, a gift. So, stay tuned till the very end of this session. Now, many of you would have attended training sessions with Paco or his training team. For the next 30 seconds, I want you to go back to the classroom, relive it, visualize the classroom that you were in when you were being trained. What do you think of? What do you remember? Do you remember the grueling hours, the late nights, the nervous butterflies that came in your stomach when you had to stand up in front of the audience for your teach back? Can you relive those eureka moments that came so fast and furious in the classroom? It was like, it was almost as if something's, you have an asteroid attack, because everything that was being said was a eureka moment at that point in the classroom. These were times when we listened with profound attention, hung on to every word. And we also had a lot of fun doing all of this because there was a lot of humor in the classroom. It kept the classroom live. It kept it crackling. There was never a dull moment. Well, whether you've attended a half-day session or a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 7 day, 10 day session, it really doesn't matter. Because when we left the session, we all knew that we just about scratched the surface. Paco has a very wide exposure to various industries and sectors and gave inputs that stuck simply to all of us. And it was not just inputs, it was also the theory that could be used practically. We could see how we were going to apply all the theory and have them impact both performance, outputs, as well as the third, which is the outcomes. Those of you who have not attended a session, well, welcome to our world. This podcast and the surprise gift that follows is basically an attempt to provide all of you the nuggets of wisdom, the examples, the framework, the theories that will help you set up a rock solid intervention. It will help you build an intervention that you are completely convinced in, that you can communicate and convince others about, because it's so darn good. And the third, it will be an intervention that you are proud about because it has tangible ROI and it leads to results. That's what we are all aiming for, isn't it? Well, great teachers are great because they in turn have had great teachers and they've had great mentors. And to flag off this session, I would like to invite two luminaries, two great teachers, two wonderful professionals, and who I would like to call transformers in the field of performance consulting. The first, the first panelist that I would like to invite to this session is Guy Wallace. Hi, Guy.
Hello.
Guy Wallace is a performance analyst and an instructional architect. He's been an external consultant since 1982 and has conducted over 250 projects. But what's most interesting is that many of these 250 projects were with Fortune 500 companies. Guy is particularly known for his consulting work, for his writings and presentations on both performance analysis and curriculum architecture design. What's important to note is that Guy's efforts have not been towards those one-off training interventions. It's been in support of business critical, large-scale efforts which have significant risks and returns. For his lifelong contribution, he has been recognized by ISPI with its highest award, which is the ISPI's Honorary Life Member Award in 2010. For those of you who don't know, ISPI is a leading authority, a mecca of sorts for performance improvement professionals who are dedicated to improving individual and organizational productivity at the workplace. He has served as the board of directors. He served as a president-elect and the president of ISPI as well. Do visit epic.biz, that's epic.biz, to get a preview on the kind of guy Guy is. This introduction does not do justice. It is not even the tip of the iceberg. Let me now move to our next panelist. Our next panelist is Anand, Dewan, or Andy. Andy is a thought leader and trailblazer in the space of learning and development, especially in the Indian subcontinent. He's established and headed teams and organizations such as DOR Consulting, NIS Sparta, and Centum, and now the BYLD or the Build Group. Anand has been instrumental in shaping, in contouring the learning and development space in India and Asia. His eyes have always been set on the prize. That is, not on training delivery, but on what training delivers. He has been part of the startup team at Reliance Retail that was instrumental in setting up performance enhancement solutions for the retail business and for leadership transformation. Under his leadership, Kotak, which is an Indian financial conglomerate, has won a special commendation award at the prestigious Golden Peacock National Training Award. The fact that this was their first attempt and they got it in their first attempt is no mean feat. Welcome to the session, Guy and Anand and Paco. Well, we've had about 400 plus registrations for this session, and many of you have registered with questions that you would like to ask Guy and Anand. We would love to take them all, but time is short. So before we start off the session, we want to really give you a sneak preview of what you will leave with when you walk out of this session. So by the end of this webinar today, our intention is to help you reflect on the following questions. The first question is, what is performance consulting versus training intervention? And what have I been doing so far? The second question is, what have I done well? What could I have done better? And where do I go from here? The third question, and a lot of questions that have come from this quarter, how can I survive the COVID environment? The fourth question, how do I fit in this AI-based future of learning and development? The fifth question, another one in which in the area of which we've received lots of queries. How do I measure my own contributions in learning consulting interventions? And sixth, but not the least, how do I continue to learn? So these are the 6 questions that you will get enough feed, enough fodder to begin thinking upon, reflecting upon by the time you leave this session today. Sounds interesting? Exciting? Well, I hope so. Well, let's get started. So for the first question, I'd like to ask Paco. Paco, how did this idea of building this podcast germinate? What were your thoughts?
So thanks a lot for that wonderful introduction for everyone. So again, welcome to everyone out here. And while we've set out an hour for this interaction, but I have a funny feeling that we probably might just, go ahead with the, probably extend the time a little bit. But then that's okay, because what you are here for is not just value, but also to see how that value can be delivered to your learners going forward. If that means an extra couple of minutes, I don't think that should be a problem. So now coming back to what was the germination point for this podcast? Well, I started my journey in the field of learning and development and performance consulting after having spent a whole lot of years in sales and business operations. And that was about 2 decades back. And I did not have any mentors, no coaches in the initial beginning and in the initial stages. But there were those people who, sort of held my hand and took me forward. And I've been doing, developing faculty and facilitators for the past about 16 years now. And the one thing which I've always felt is that how can others not go through the same process that I went through, the pain that I went through, the pain of not knowing what I should know, the pain of ignorance, which you realize much later once the ignorance goes away. So this whole idea is, how do we reach out to people? How do we pay forward, to facilitators, faculty, teachers, trainers, performance consultants all across the globe in terms of what we have learned from our coaches and mentors. Okay? And so if you have just started your journey in the performance consulting or teaching, training, facilitation career, then this is what will help you build a solid ground and a solid foundation in terms of how you should do, what you should do, and stand with conviction in front of your consumers, which is your learners, your customers, your colleagues. And for those who have already been successful, this will be a way to help you understand what makes you tick. Okay? So that was the germination point, which I said, well, could we go ahead and reach out to people? And my promise to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that we will come to you with all those tools that are required for you to help you build your conviction, but we'll also get stellar personalities in the learning and development and performance space with whom you can see what made them tick, okay, and probably pick up a leaf out of their life and replicate. So that's the purpose and how it started germinating in my mind, Niharika.
Right. Thank you for that, Paco. I think a lot of us are going to receive some great inputs, some great advice that's going to impact the way we do our training sessions, our learning consulting as we go forward. I'd like to now go to Guy. Guy, if you were to describe your view on performance consulting, what is performance consulting and what it seeks to do? And you were to give like your 60-second sound bite on it, what would it be?
60 seconds. That 60 seconds might be tough, but so I see the difference. I see performance consulting as beyond knowledge and skills, because we in the training business, if we are doing performance-based training, well, that's different than regular training because there could be, training or education on topics. But when we're doing training in an enterprise sense, we're looking at what are the tasks and outputs of people that perform, and if we need to train them on that so that they are performance competent. they can produce, they can perform tasks to produce outputs to stakeholder requirements. And so there's many in our business in the field of training and development, learning and development, that need to take a performance orientation and make sure that they are actually preparing people and training them, direct instruction on how to perform the tasks to produce the outputs and what are the stakeholder requirements, what are the metrics for all of that. So that's performance-based training. Now, if I were in my analysis to determine what are the performance tasks and outputs, I should be looking at what are the current state gaps. Why are people struggling with the job, perhaps? And I need to look beyond that to what are the barriers. So what are the barriers in the environment? What are the barriers in the deficits of people? You know, maybe they have the knowledge and skills, but they don't have the physical stamina to do the job. So there's many different factors beyond knowledge and skills that one needs to look at if we're going to truly do performance consulting. And then we're going to overlap with things like total quality management and industrial psychology, those kinds of things here. So there's many overlaps into the world of performance improvement. We are just one alley, a roadway into performance through affecting people's awareness, knowledge, and skills.
Right, that was great. That was under 60 seconds, guys. So thank you. So thank you for that. And that was very eloquently put, you know, how do you produce results? What are the performance tests and outputs? How do you start from the current state? What are the gaps? What are the barriers? And use and leverage all the inputs that you have from other fields like total quality management to really substantiate your offering. So thank you for that. Anand, I'm going to come with the same question, copy paste, same question to you. What is your 60-second view on performance consulting and what it seeks to do?
Thank you. And now that I know that you really monitor 60 seconds, I'll be extra careful about it. So I have that's not part of my introduction, but I have a very 10-year foundation before I came into learning and development. And that foundation happens to be in sales and business. And one very strong thing I learned is that business is like oil. It mixes only with business. And I brought that mantra when I came into L&D. And to me, that's what is performance consulting about. End of the day, somebody is paying for what's happening. And somebody is paying because they need to see return on their investments. If your journey to look at consulting on performance begins there, you invariably end up at the right destination. And to me, it's always been about starting where does the business leader have sleepless nights? And let's begin our investigation from there. And as you go on this journey, the various stations that come in the course, they keep you on the correct path. And if you deviate, they bring you back to the correct path because your view is from that of the business. And end of the day, that's why you're doing what you're doing. So to me, performance consulting is about like my mantra, which says it's not about delivery, it's about deliverables. What are you going to get end of that? That's my view on performance consulting.
Great, thanks for that. I mean, that's great advice. Where does the business leader have sleepless nights? What's keeping that guy awake? And keep that as your guiding force all through. And if you deviate, that's what that one central message is going to get you back on track. So thank you so much for that nugget of advice, Anand.
I have a question for you, Guy. And I know that you've been in the space for many years. It's been almost 30 plus years, right, Guy?
Who, for me, Guy?
Yeah.
I've been in the business 41 years.
Yeah. So what can you just share with us, with the listeners out here, in terms of what have been your light bulb moments or turning points when you moved towards becoming performance consultant? Some 2-3 points around that, if you can just share with all our listeners.
Yes, well, I was very lucky. In 1979, I left college with my degree in radio, TV, film, and I went to work for a company in their headquarters where they were converting their training into video-based training. And that was my entree into the world of training and development, if you will. But the people that I went to work for influenced me by giving me books by Bob Mager to read. So I read Analyzing Performance Problems, or They Really Ought to Wanna. And that lit a fire under me in terms of changing my orientation to, what is training all about, to it being about performance. And that was very influential. And I also got exposed to the work of Tom Gilbert and Gary Rumler and Joe Harless and many, many others. But it was that exposure to that performance orientation from first Bob Mager, and then really my hero, my guru, was the late Gary Rumler. And I learned from him. I got a chance to meet him at a conference. I got a chance to work with him in my second job in the business when I was at Motorola. And they had a profound impact on me. I also got a chance to work with Neil Rackham of Spin Selling fame. And that changed how I approach interpersonal skills and interpersonal relationships, because that was the basis for their spin selling training and for their win-win negotiations program, which I was involved in back in 81, 82. But those influences, exposures to certain people and their performance orientation just made a world of sense to me. And so I followed that and borrowed and stolen everything that I could from everybody else and incorporated it into my practices.
So I'd like to sort of give a 30-second nugget on spin selling and Neil Rackham. So I underwent spin training, and I used to be a spin sales trainer. And obviously, spin is something which does not stop at the workplace. It seeps into your life as well. So after many, many years, my wife went through the same spin sales training, and she comes back from the training and says, "You will not talk to me. I know what you have been doing all these years." So spin has had a profound effect on everyone who's gone through that, and I guess So of course, so how easy or how difficult was it to establish yourself as a performance consultant in your market, especially considering that in the early 80s there were just a handful of people like the late Dr. Rumler who were trying very hard to establish performance consulting as a practice. So was it easy? Was it difficult? How was it those days?
It was easier in some respects because it was easier to differentiate yourself and your practice when you were focused on performance, when you could talk about everybody talks about task analysis. Well, one thing that's missing in task analysis is what are the outputs that are produced and how do you know a good one from a bad one? So people can perform tasks, but that doesn't mean they produce what Tom Gilbert called the worthy output. Easier for me to get into the business because I went to work from Motorola I joined a small consulting firm where the owner of the firm was a former Bell Labs engineer, and he had the engineering credentials to get us into high-tech organizations. A lot of Fortune 100 and 200, 500 companies were our clients, and he got us in the door because of his background as a former Bell Labs engineer. And then our approach to instruction was very architectural or engineering, and we looked at shareable content and unique content and how to take some content and create a derivative for another audience to make it more authentic to that second audience. And so we incorporated a lot of engineering kinds of practices, a lot of when I worked at Motorola, I supported manufacturing, materials, and purchasing, and they were all about how to reduce their costs as a business for products. And instruction, a curriculum, if you will, is a bunch of instructional products, and some of the content for engineers could be appropriate for the financial people and for the sales people, and yet they have their own unique needs. So that's been my approach, taking it to that. So that differentiation made it easier for us to get attract attention to ourselves and to get consulting business because of that. But I think it's much different today.
As you rightly said, that in some ways it was easy but in some ways it was quite tough, because at the end of the day, there were only those fewer number of organizations who had that evolved sense that, all about, which is, by the way, even good today. I mean, I just wish most of the facilitators actually go task focused rather than topic focused. And I've been following you in your latest, rumblings around on the LinkedIn, wherein you've been talking about task versus topics for the last couple of days, and I'm sure there must have been a exciting conversation which might have led to this sometime earlier. But then that's the point. I mean, how do you differentiate what is required when, and so on and so forth. So I do realize that the situation was different then, and the situation is different today. But while I pose that question for you, let me take it to Anand right now. So Anand, in the L&D and performance consulting in Asian markets have matured in the past decade and a half, if I'm not wrong. Said that, everyone wants performance impact, which it's like something which is sort of ingrained into the KPI of every business leader that we talk about, that it has to have a performance impact. But what are the challenges that you have been seeing, that you have seen towards getting clients to agree to making all the efforts that are required to impact performance and behavior in the long run? But everyone wants performance impact, but then for performance impact, there is also a journey that you have to do, right? And the journey means that there's a cost attached to the journey. So in your experience in Asian markets, what has been your challenge with regards to getting clients to invest in not just the thought, but actually sign on the dotted line and say that, yes, I'm going to be there with you as you walk the path?
Thank you for asking that question. It's also happens to be an area of huge challenge, especially when you're on the other side, to get clients convinced. And one of the things that I have seen closely in this transition is everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And dying cannot be outsourced. You can't call me in as a consultant and say, you do this for me and I go to heaven. It doesn't work that way. So what we do is we offer two types of, and we put it very upfront on the table to customers, that you want a bespoke end-to-end solution, or you want to pick up a book from the library and read for a while, whet your appetite, and then come back and say, I want to buy the complete book. We are open both ways. End of the day, I have to run a business as well. So I'm keeping I want to read the book kind of profile aside and coming to the bespoke ones, where invariably I am on board of most of the transformation projects that we take. And that also tells us they are far and few, because I can afford to dedicate that much time, because not everybody, steps into travel the mile. Now, one of the things we see there is, firstly, what is the appetite and what is the skin in the game from the business point of view? And wherever we have seen that business along with L&D has stepped into the solutioning and has bought into the pain, which is what we say as making an implicit need into an explicit need as far as the pain is concerned, they make sure the entire organization steps in to take the next mile to connectivity on the learning. Because if it's buy-in at the business level, then it gets driven by business. Because end of the day, we must understand, all of us in L&D, all the people there are a specialist function. A doctor doesn't come to your house to get you well. He tells you what you need to do in order to have good health. But you can't have a live-in with a doctor because you want to be having a good health. And it really, I kind of find it extremely difficult to help this understand to the fraternity members and at times to clients. But if we have seen that if business is there and they get the confidence that they're talking to the right person on the other side, it happens very fast. And we have seen some huge successes because then people are willing to travel till the last mile. There's a huge automotive joint which comes in from Europe into India and comes in with fair amount of legacy. And till the time we were with HR, we were focusing on only one thing. And it's a very unique thing that even inside of the organization, how there are communication challenges. And they kept on talking about, we are not able to move to value selling. And I took that value to be the brand value. And we made a whole proposition around saying, how do you get your people to understand the emotion of the brand, the legacy of the brand? And this all is what we will do. And then we went, just before you were about to go to business, I had the head of marketing who had been my, earlier classmate. And I happened to connect to him while I was walking out of one of the meetings. And I said, why don't we have coffee together? And he explained to me that the pain they have in value selling is because the sales is not adding value to distribution. Now, Paco, you've also been in sales, and Guy, you will connect that there is a huge, these are two different worlds. Sales not adding value to the distribution versus value selling from a brand perspective. It's like I was in two different parts of the world. And that coffee conversation turned around the entire presentation, which we went back with. We had an instant sign off because we were talking the language of business. So to me, whenever I've seen businesses had skin in the game, we've had people who are willing to work that hard. And that's my continuous request to LNOD fraternity as well. Keep the theory to yourself and take the learning to the learner, because that's what they understand. Theory is for us as specialists. So that's my 2 cents.
So you I think you hit the nail on the head. Okay, and that's, when we were trying to find out the right name for the podcast, and we said theory of learning. So everyone jumped out and said, no, it should be practice of learning, okay, or something like that. Theory turned into practice. And I said, no, theory of learning is important because it goes ahead and makes you strong in what you stand for. But that is not what the client is interested to listen. The client is interested to listen in very simple words. What's in it for me? How does it work for me? How do I get from point A to point B with the minimal amount of cost, minimal amount of time, with the maximum amount of impact? Very simple.
But Paco, sorry, I'm interrupting you there. If you remember our first, what kind of conversation should I call it? The first falling in love conversation with you was because amongst the many team members that I had this one gentleman who was not just the tip of the iceberg. Whatever you would speak, he would go down to the last mile on understanding the fundamentals, the theory behind how it works. And the way you would bring it to the audience was so simplified that even 2 levels down could connect to what you're saying. So end of the day, theory was in your mind, but how it gets applied was your ability. And that's the skill of a facilitator, which made me fall in love with you at that time. And it continues to be a story after that. So you carry that, and that's what trainers are supposed to be. Make it simple. End of the day, it's knowledge precedes skill, but shouldn't stop at knowledge. Absolutely. Society, end of the day, recognizes intelligence but rewards contribution.
Yeah, true. So coming to contribution and intelligence, okay, Guy, what would be for our listeners out here who are mostly LNOD, fellows, okay, if you were to say 5 things that will help them, catapult themselves in the changed world order as we are seeing right now, what are the 5 things to move to be a performance consultant to begin with?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to have a 5 here. I might have more or less, but off the top of my head, I think that people in our profession that want to impact performance through their instructional interventions need to have an analysis methodology that, unlike the methodology of the back in the day, which we called analysis paralysis, because it takes so long. I had an internal client at Motorola tell me one time, I was brand new to the company, brand new to this group that I was going to serve. And I said, he's told me his request, and there was 30 people in the room, and he told me his request. And I said, okay, well, here's how we'll go forward. We're going to do analysis. And he said, stop. He said, we hate it when you come back 90 days later and tell us what we told you on day 1. And that was my signal, his signal to me, that they hated analysis as people in the training business talked about it, because it often led to a paralysis effort where not much got done over a long period of time. And so his suggestion was 90 days later, you're going to come back here and tell us what we're telling you now. So you're not adding any value. So I had to respond to him and share with them, 30 people, how I was going to conduct the analysis, what kind of data I was going to go after. Not how I was going to get it, but what data I was going to get from my analysis effort, and then explain to them how I was going to use that to affect the design, which would then affect the development, much like they as manufacturers did a lot of development after some engineers created a design for things. So I tried to put it in the language of their language, in the language of business. I like to say that we should save our jargon for our conferences and meeting with our peers, but we should only talk to the client in their language. They don't want to learn about training and learning and all of that. They just want some results, and they come to us because we do training. So they ask us for training, but we need to be able to go beyond training to help them see the other root causes that may be inhibiting their performance. But so if it's training for new hires, that should be expected. If it's training for problem solving, I think that should be suspected. I suspect all requests for training that isn't for new hires, because somebody's trying to solve a problem. And if we know anything about W. Edwards Deming, the late Deming, the quality guru, 94% of all problems are due to the system. Not to individual contributors, not to their lack of knowledge and skills, not to any other problems that they might have. It's to the system, which is owned by management. So if we're going to solve problems, if that's what our customer is wanting us to do, we have to have a way to go beyond that and look at the performance. What are those outputs? What are those tasks? What are all the inputs? What are all the environmental context? What's the culture like? Do they have the right materials and equipment and tools? There's a lot of things that have to do with creating a performance context, and the human being is just one part of that, and their knowledge and skills is just one part of the human being, because there's many aspects that we need to look at as well. And so I don't know that's not 5 things, but so the focus on performance, tasks, and outputs, and what are the stakeholder requirements. And I think this is a place where people do a very surface level job of understanding what are the metrics, what are the business metrics. Because there's many stakeholders besides the customer, the downstream customer. There's regulators, there's the owners, the shareholders, there's the employees, many different stakeholders. And so, what are their requirements for the process itself and the tasks therein? And what are their requirements for the output? And if we're not crystal clear on what are the outputs and tasks and the measures for both, we're not going to be able to, hit a bullseye. We're not going to be able to give them instruction to help them perform as required in the job. We're going to maybe miss things that are barriers, and we need to, get the strategies and tactics of master performers on how do they avoid barriers in the first place, and what do they do if they're unavoidable. And so we need to have a performance analysis and instructional analysis methodology and approach that teases all of that out quickly, as soon as possible, not 90 days later, but 9 hours later. Can we define the end state and make it crystal clear? And can we discuss the problems in the current state that will resonate with our clients so that they know that, oh yeah, we're cognizant, we recognize that there's those problems, and we can help them address those, not necessarily through instruction, maybe, perhaps, but through other means as well. And those things might be outside of our wheelhouse. It may be that, new programming software has to be created or whatever. So we can take a lead in helping to understand what are the issues and opportunities in a performance situation, but we can help guide and orchestrate the addressing them, but we ourselves may not have all the knowledge and skills, and we need to learn how to partner with other organizations that are all part of feeding the performance context. Who sends the information and data, who sends the tools and equipment, who is in control of the culture? Because there's many things here that training is not going to affect, and we need to be cognizant of that, help our clients see that by taking them along on the journey as we address their needs.
That was really very comprehensive. And so the few words and phrases that I'm taking out of the entire thing is that don't get, don't make analysis into paralysis, which is a common as if you all over the globe, even in Asia. So be very clear in terms of what you're analyzing, how you're analyzing, and don't come back after 90 days, come back after 9 hours, and come out with something which is seen as value rather than a whole lot of bullshit around what the client already knows. Okay, so do that very well. So analyze your performance, analyze the tasks which are there involved from a L&D perspective. But that's not completely performance consulting, as you rightly mentioned. That's just one strand. Clear understanding of the metrics which are in the play. That has to be there. Clear definition of output is required, and be open to what all else is required to impact performance, and not just focus on what you're going to deliver in terms of training. I think those we can take as gospel, my dear friends. All the others gospel. It as gospel, yeah, and move forward this country. Guy with all his experience, yeah.
Right. So I want to come in here, and we've got a lot of people who have asked us this question. I don't know if they are there on the call right now. We've got quite a few attendees on the call, but there's Raghavan Neelkantan, Dr. Nandi Shiramat, Parijit Guha, A. Iris, Swati, B. Shivasamukavali, Rakesh Sharma, Deepak Mundada, and Abhijit Pradhan, amongst a lot of others who have asked this one question, which revolves around the COVID environment and the new world order, and what is in store for them. So I'd like to go to Anand for this question. Anand, the COVID-19 has changed the way we perform, the way we do our business. It's left an indelible mark in the way the future unfolds. From a business perspective, how do you think that should a trainer transform into a performance consultant? You've had this kind of experience way back at the subprime crisis as well. So while the situation is not the same, but it's somewhat similar. So how do you think a trainer should transform into a performance consultant? Would you like to give some tips, especially in this environment?
Let me just understand your. Yeah, I'm very much there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So let me just understand. What are you saying? Trainer transforming to performance consultant,
yes.
Or are you saying in the COVID? Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yes. So the COVID
linking the two, because these are two
linking
different
the two.
things.
Yes.
In the COVID.
So in the COVID environment.
So with your permission, let me first de-link the two.
Okay. All right. Sure.
For limitation of my knowledge on this. And I'll tell you why I'm saying what I'm saying. And this is my view. I have also taken it to a lot of experts, and I've had some different views from them. A lot of them, and I see a lot, with all due respects, because it's about conviction with which you say what you say, and one has to respect that. So we see a lot of mails coming to me, webinars, where people are talking about post-COVID, what we need to do and how we need to do, and we're going to tell you how to manage your business. Give me a break. We don't even know what has hit us as yet. We don't know what is on the other side of lockdown. We don't know this animal. So how on earth can we say, I can help you build your business post-COVID? And I had my own marketing team come up and say, sir, COVID is selling and we got to link it. I said, I have never done mis-selling in my life, even when I sold a pen in my interview. And I'll not do it now either. So I'd rather have two people in my webinar who are there because they want to be there, not because I'm trying to, under the garb of COVID, try and sell something. So honestly, I don't have an answer what we need to do in COVID. But yes, one thing on whatever this animal is definitely requires, and it's going to be everybody's responsibility, is employee safety and health. It's not just HR, it's not employees themselves, it's not leadership, it's not organization. It is everybody who needs to take care of that. Now, how does LNOD play a role there? If there is one intervention, if there is one initiative that you want to focus your energies on, is changing habits of people. because we are going to a new normal. We are not going to the world the way we knew it before COVID. It's not going to come back even after the vaccine is found, in my view, because by then we would have adjusted to a new normal. What you call as the first order change, second order change, this is the first order change. It's going to make you change, you like it or not. And people are most uncomfortable when they have to change, not when they want to change. We can see this with few shops opening in Delhi today and in Mumbai. We already saw the mad rush. It's like school children. I think children are much well behaved today than what we saw on the streets. So if anybody says this is what you go do post COVID and this is how you prepare yourself, I'm willing to take autograph myself and be a subject, a learner to the person. I haven't found really one. So my only 2 cents are is, first of all, look at our own habits, change them, influence people to change their habits. That's the least you can provide. Now, coming to the business and how you move on to performance consulting. What you will need to do in post COVID is have your anything that you view from business has to come in from eyes of the corner room for the next 2 years, because anything that you talk of in terms of a 3-year horizon alignment is not going to ring a bell in years of the business. That's a person who's fighting a lonely battle to get the ship back to the sea. And to them, no amount of frills and 7 courses are going to sound music. What they would want to see and hear is, how am I going to ensure that I'll be safe with all the passengers on board, crossing these choppy waters which are waiting for me on the other side of lockdown. So if as L&D professionals, we are able to not just view, but empathize with what the corner office is facing. Now look at the role of HR. I see HR and LNOD's role as that of what is medical fraternity's role to countries today. On one side, there'll be a tsunami of emotions that you will deal with when people come back to work, those who do. And on the other side, you will be part of senior leadership meetings where you will have to take some tough decisions because business has to survive. To me, it's the same decision a doctor takes between who gets the ventilator and who doesn't. Everybody, for everyone, the job is important, the role is important, but it's important for the organization to survive as well. That in itself is a huge ask. I think that's where to begin with. A lot of your hands are already full with that. I wouldn't really think of going and talking developmental issues right now. I would rather first focus on where I need to provide a raft, where I need to provide a life float. Then to so that's my my sense on the thing. I don't know if I've been able to answer your question.
Just to add on to that, Niharika, I mean, when the 2008 subprime crisis happened, okay, I had just joined as the head of the Corporate University for the Financial Services Conglomerate. And at that point of time, everyone was wondering, you know, how do you go ahead and sell debt funds right now because equity is not going to work and all of that. And you know what we did was, we just went ahead and ran programs around learned optimism by Martin Seligman. Because what we realized was, at that point of time, what was required for everyone was not to get into the downward spiral. So at all points of time, we need to focus on the long home run, but we also need to focus on what that batting is going to be at that point of time as well. Because, you know, when you're looking at mass replication of, you know, and we had people who were wanting to commit suicide, and I'm not a counselor. But at that point of time, some 3,000, 4,000 people, we took them through, and there were hundreds of cases where people would come back and say, thank you. That hitting on that individual, right, in terms of providing that support, is what will keep him alive or keep her alive for the next day. The next day is where you start working on what is the long-term plan that you can put in place. Similarly, right now, as Anand said, you know, we are in a situation where we need, if we can just take care of what is happening right now in terms of being able to build habit. And there's a question out here, how do we go ahead and build habit? It's about going ahead and practicing. Ask that question and build those. First of all, break those habits which are sort of slowing you down or holding you back, and build new habits. And how do you really build that habit? You just keep on practicing it and honing it over a period.
Just one more point, Paco, and with your permission, I don't know if
Please.
you allow one to promote there. And I just realized I have this in common with Guy, and two things, Guy. One, I am also a Film Institute graduate in India. I am also ex Motorola. So that's a common thing we need to talk about, the discovery we made here. So, Paco, are you allowed to promote your films on the show? So I have
That,
three
you
things
can
I
go
want to
ahead.
say. I'll
Go
not
ahead.
promote the film unless you give me an okay. But
Go
on a
ahead.
serious note, three things that we have done with our teams. Number one, I have told all my direct reportees to call up their top 10 to 15 customers and tell them, we are there for you. How can we help? Don't tell them what you can do. Don't try and be consultants. This is not the time to consult. This is the time to stand there. If they want to bounce off their thoughts, if they want to take your time, pro bono, there is no billing right now. There is just you and the customer. Just stand by. That's the first thing we have done. Second, because we are also a business, we need to survive. Between 50 to 70% is the discount that we've done online for programs, because it doesn't cost me a classroom. It doesn't cost me the same for the facilitators when we deliver. We as leadership team are out there delivering sessions day in and day out by discounting them by 50 to 70%, so that people can still learn, pick up what they think. And we've looked at those courses which are, let's say, emotional intelligence and stuff like that. And the other piece we've done, thanks to our partners across the globe, is we are soon launching a program on power of habits, which is by Vital Smarts in the US. A guy would know them. And we are also launching resilience from Persona Global. Now, these are the programs that have been received and specifically developed for the current situation. So that's what we thought is our service should be to. If we get something that's been researched, tried, makes sense, is in alignment. Other, just be there for the customers. These three things, and I think we're getting an amazing response and respect from the customers. Sorry, Paco, I promoted the movie. I was not allowed to. Was that okay?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. I mean, you, good, the bad, the ugly.
No, I had this lingering feeling that I have not answered Niharika's question well, and this is the best that came to my mind. I thought, let me just talk about it
But
anyway.
by the way, this
So
is
those are the
exactly
things, Niharika, you can do.
this is what we expected, when I and Niharika discussed, that if we pose this question to either you or Guy, we will have a response in the same lines. That it is time for empathizing with people, just be there, like the fish philosophy, just be there. You just need to be there.
Absolutely, you said it.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we wanted this kind of response coming from you, Anand, because this is the kind of questioning that is coming to all of our professionals that are here on the session, and they need to know how to go ahead and respond to such queries that are coming their way, right? So de-link both of them and focus on, like what you said, focus on what's happening in the corner office and deal with what they are really troubled with, what's causing them sleepless nights. Guy, I'd like to come to you. This is a question that has come from several quarters, again, in different forms and formats. So the journey may not have been rosy all through. You may have had either a difficult customer, a tough customer who is not ready to buy into the solution that you're proposing, or it might have been a tough environment that you have been, set up to work in. How have you handled a situation where the odds were stacked against you?
I think if I felt that the odds were stacked against me, it was because my client had already decided exactly what they wanted. And then it's a matter of beginning the journey with that client to either confirm or deny that they know what they're talking about, that they have a clear a grasp on their own situation that they're trying to address. So what I have done, I have a device, a little tool, a template for a lesson map. And normally when I'm doing design of a lesson, I have analysis data that informs that design process. And what I would do with clients who I felt, where it was stacked against me, that they already knew exactly what they wanted for sure, and they just wanted me to be an order taker, and I don't do that well. I would ask them my questions as if they were my analysis data, and I would try to create the design in front of their very eyes. So I'd go to their flip chart or their whiteboard, and I draw out a lesson map, and I start asking them questions so that I could put things on my lesson map. And if they didn't have the answer, I'd just draw a box and put a question mark in it and leave it blank. And that helped them to see that they don't have the answers to my questions that would affect my design, which would affect what we would develop. And if my questions make sense, and if what I'm looking for makes sense, and they can begin to see how that would, yes, be part of the training, then they come to realize that they don't have all the answers, and that maybe we need to let Guy go out and do this analysis so he can get the right answers. But I play along with them. I was taught by the late Joe Harless to always say, yes, we can help you, and we can help you even more if we do a little analysis. So clients usually want you to skip the upfront analysis and design. They really want you to just start developing. And create a template might be the only design work that you get to do, but I resist that, and I don't take on projects like that. So I might explain, okay, I hear your request, here's how we would go forward doing that, here's my rationale why. Now, then I would do a proposal and a bid, and I might lose that work because I had time and effort into analysis and design before development, and my competitors may have just jumped in with development and started, to produce content. So I find that in my initial dialogue with my clients, I have to help them see what it is that I would do, what information they already have that they can give me right now, and what information that they are missing, thus leading to my need to do more data gathering. And don't call it analysis if that's a problem. Again, it's our language is we can call it discovery, we can call it analysis, we can call it assessment, we can call it searching, whatever the client is comfortable with. Because if they hate that word analysis, we don't want to use it anymore.
Yes, completely agree with you. So ask them questions, get them to uncover what they don't know. I mean, get them to figure out what is it that they don't know as yet, and then go ahead and co-create with them. I guess that's in a nutshell.
Yes, I like that. So clients are usually removed from the performance, the work that we're trying to affect with training, and so. So one of my things is my tricks, if you will, how I manipulate them is I Socratically ask them a bunch of questions. They give me some answers. They don't have the others. They can see where those other answers have importance. Then I can ask them to help me assemble a team of master performers. Mm-hmm. I used to have subject matter experts, but I don't anymore. I quit doing 1980s because I want a master performer, somebody who's doing the job to a level of mastery the day before we meet to pin down what are we going to train everybody else on so they can soon become masters as well. And so I've got to get them to see that and to allow me to do analysis. And because I want to do analysis in a much quicker approach, my methods are to assemble a team for analysis purposes or design purposes or development purposes and get the master performers, the top of the cream of the crop, the people we want everybody else to emulate. And so if you can get 8 to 12 master performers together, you can do the analysis real quickly. You'll get it right. One thing that we have to deal with is when we're dealing with people, experts, anybody really, is that most of people's knowledge is non-conscious. If you ask experts to describe something that a novice will have to do, they'll miss 70% of what the novice needs because they're on automatic pilot. It's in the back of their minds. They're just doing it without thinking it, and because their working memory will only hold so much. So we've all learned how to park that stuff back in the recesses of our mind and use it as we need it. But if we're asked about it, we can't explain it well. And so when we deal with a subject matter expert or a master performer, they can give us a partial view of what a new person will need. And so we have to find mechanisms to quickly figure out, fill in the gaps. So if you bring a bunch of master performers together, they build up something that's greater than the 30% that any one of them could have given us. And we can get after it that way. But I've got to convince my client to give me the right resources. And if we want to do this quickly, you know, you want to take 3 weeks or 3 days to do this, is their business choice. So I manipulate them by giving them the option of a 3-week or 3-month worth of analysis or 3 days worth. And 3 days worth is we bring a bunch of people together, the right people to do the right thing at the right time. And so they always buy that. They like that. Sometimes it's not convenient, but they understand the reason we need together the right people to help capture what it is we need to train others. Sorry,
right. No, it makes perfect sense, Guy. And I hope all of those who are listening know how to deal with a toughie that comes across your way. You know, someone who you need to convince and you need to get onto your side. What are some of the ways you can do that? So thank you so much for that, Guy. Anand, I'd like to take this next question to you. We hear so much buzz about augmented reality and artificial intelligence and how that's going to completely change the way we are, the way we learn, the way we teach and train. So what are your views on how it's going to impact our learning and development in the future? How do you think we can be a little future ready, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, that's and I think that's the conversation right now with every business leader who has a bent towards technology, because that has a significant impact on their cost of learning, and that's really sits inside of huge HR budgets that they carry. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, Anand.
Sorry, there was a signal drop.
Yeah.
So when it comes and it's actively engaged inside of a business, it's going to be an amazing power that it provides to the business. Just to give you a demonstration of one example that we had, it can go track to the last mile an individual contributor out of a whole learning intervention that you're doing across, let's say, 20,000, 30,000 people, and pick up a single individual, pull person out and say, this is his or her learning.
Anand, we've lost you.
My apologies, call drops. I don't know why there's sudden load on. Am I audible, Niharika?
Yes, you are now. So we got you until 20, 30,000 people going through the intervention.
So when technology really sets in from an AI perspective, it will have the ability to pull out that one single individual to that one and zero in on that one single individual's need, the power at the extreme end. However, today it's only at a stage where a lot is being talked about. Half of that is being experimented, and another half of that is actually being used by organizations. Today, if we talk to 10 customers, 8 of them would talk about, are you technology enabled? Would you be able to, and when I say today, this was pre-COVID, I'm sure it has changed after COVID. Would you be able to integrate technology? Would you provide blended learning? Whereas even the use of LMS is less than 60% today. Effectiveness even lower. So for technology to really integrate, I think it's going to take Gen Z to drive. So it is certainly the future, no two ways about it, but I at least see it well entrenched and settled only about a good 5 to 7 years from now, not before that. But yes, there are baby steps in that direction.
Okay, we seem to have lost Anand again. But the basic import of what he is saying is that we've started taking baby steps in this direction. A lot of talk, a lot of noise. 50% of it has become being experimented, and out of that 50%, just about 50% has of the experimentation is now getting implemented, and we are at least 6-7 years away. That really means that we should keep our eyes open. We should be looking at the latest trends. Be willing to research, be willing to be on trend, but it still needs a little more time to get into the mainstream. I hope I've got the import of what Anand was trying to say.
So I'm sorry, I just got knocked off in between. Murphy's Law, my laptop crashed. Okay, so I'm right now on the phone and I'm trying to re-log in. So please excuse me for the time being. And I know that we were supposed to have a 1-hour session, and we are probably, going a little ahead in terms of time. But as I see from the messages that people are quite wanting to have answers to all of their questions, and as we started with that, we can only take those many number of questions as of now, and we will respond to all the questions later on. So what we'll do is we'll spend the next 2-3 minutes, putting up 1 or 2 more questions, Niharika, because I'm going to take some time to log in. Okay. And,
sure, no worries.
We can slowly veer towards, where we are supposed to head today.
Yeah. So Guy, this question comes to you, Guy. When it comes to measuring learning efficacy, the Kirkpatrick-Philip model gives us a framework to assess the efficacy of learning intervention. We can go up to level 4 and level 5, which looks at the ROI of learning. But what are some lead or lag indicators or metrics that you would suggest that our performance consultants should look at?
Well, I think that most people that are using the Kirkpatrick model or the Phillips model with 5 levels, what I think surveys show across the industry is that most of us use a level 1, what is called the SMILES test.
Yes.
Happy with it, was the room comfortable, was the food good, etc. And that's insufficient. In fact, there's examples where instructors who had the lowest scores from their students. There's an example from Century 21, a real estate company in the U.S., about one of my former friends and colleagues, the late Roger Chevalier. He went to work for them, and they said, "Okay, we've got 100 trainers, and 10 of them really need to go. They're not performing well." He looked at the data coming back on those instructors, and yes, they had the worst scores from their students. But then he looked at the students of those 10 compared to the other students from the 90 other instructors, and he found out that these 10 instructors, the lousiest instructors, had the best students in terms of selling real estate. And what this indicated is that the SMILES test, that level 1 reaction data, can be misleading. And we really should be looking at level 4/5 results/ROI. Back in 1979, I was taught that results was ROI. So when the 5th level came around later on, I was said, well, okay, whatever. But I would suggest that we should be, so when content is task or topic is targeted, there's your ROI right there. So the selection of addressing one thing versus another is going to impact what your ROI can be, what it could be, and not necessarily what it will be. But what we need to be concerned about is what is the level 2 mastery? What needs to be mastered in training or through a job aid? What performance needs to be mastered? And can we teach that? And can people learn it? Can we measure that? Measure the difference pre and post training. Did they learn it? And then what's most important, the most important thing is, does it even transfer to the job? Because if we train people on things that are not authentic and they can master them in the classroom and score 100%, and then they go out into the field and try it, and it doesn't work so smoothly, and they give it up. It's just like learning a new golf grip or a new tennis grip. As soon as you start with a new grip, your results go to pieces. They're worse than they were before, so you revert back to the old behavior, the old grip, and you'll never get really much better, but at least you'll have some ball control. So what we need to worry about is training people to do an authentic work, their performance requirements, and making sure that that transfers. And we have to look at what are the barriers to transfer. Is this going to be a tough thing to learn in the classroom and then use out there in the real world? Your peers or your supervisors going to inhibit you from using the new behaviors because they're not familiar with them, they're not comfortable with them? So that's something that we all need to look at. It's beyond just training people how to perform. It's how to help with that transfer going out there. Do we need to give the supervisors something? Do we need to give the peers something so that they can understand the new behaviors, the cognitive behaviors, the physical behaviors that we're asking people to do? We want them to think about things differently. Well, we may need to share that with their peers and their supervisors or their customers, depending on what that performance looks like, so that they have a prayer of getting out there and trying it. We train them, putting training wheels on their bike, send them out to the real world, and they got to rip the training wheels off, and sometimes they cannot apply what they've learned because it's difficult. And that's where we may need the supervisor to be a coach to encourage guys to continue with the right behaviors until the results become reinforcing. Because initially the results are not reinforcing. They in fact will get people to give it up immediately because that didn't work. And so we need to look at many things. And then so when we're measuring, we need to measure the actual performance. And when we have a task focus versus a topic focus, it's easier for us because at least we can count productivity increases in tasks. They can perform the tasks, at 110% of what they used to, or whatever the delta is, the change in behavior. We need to learn how to measure authentic performance in the workplace, back that out in our training and measure there. But the ultimate measure is a business measure, not some training or learning measure, but the business measures. And so we need to understand when our clients come to us with a request, what business metrics might this affect? And because if the business uses their business metrics to run the business, they obviously trust them to some extent to where they're going to use them to run the business. So why can't we use those same measures? Why do we have to come up with some intermediate measure? Well, if teaching on topics, there is no direct correlation to tasks and performance and business measures. And so we hold ourselves at a disadvantage when we focus on topics. If the client comes and talks to us about a topic, we need to convert that into a task. Well, how does that topic apply in the real world? How many different places in the real world does that apply itself? So that we can do more authentic training and have an impact on the business measures. But too often, we don't understand the business measures we're being asked to affect. We don't understand what the baseline and trends are of those numbers. And so we don't understand what are the other variables that may or may not help us affect that number, improve it. And so it's part of the thing where we just take an order, we develop some content, we deliver it. We don't understand the performance context of what we're trying to affect well enough. And that's why we need to have that as part of our analysis methodology. But so figuring out what business measures are the ones to go after, that's a client decision. Then they come to us with a request, and we need to figure out how we're going to affect that business number, and not some, again, intermediate number that we made up, some learning measure, so we can report that and pat ourselves on the back. We really need to look at how do we affect the bottom lines, those numbers that the business currently uses to measure their own productivity, their own quality of performance, and we need to tie to those.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that explanation, Guy. I don't think it could have been put across better. I mean, at the end of the day, it loops back to what the business is looking at as a delta, as a performance improvement. And let's measure ourselves against that and be more focused towards the task and see how we can help the trainees master the task that they're supposed to do, and see how they can go and apply what they're doing in the training room when they go back to their jobs. So thank you very much for that great explanation. It's all about having an outcome-based assessment, and that's what we're looking at. So thank you so much for that. Last questions as we're veering towards the end of the session. Paco, and this question comes to you, Paco. What would happen if we would fail to learn? Is this a continuum? What would happen if we just stop learning? Or
So this
are
is
not
a
able to
question
learn?
this is a question which a lot of people have asked me, not just for this webinar, but otherwise as well. And I didn't understand this question 20 years back. I understand the question now. And see the difference between an individual and an individual who's moving forward is how much time is that individual spending in sharpening the saw. It essentially means is, are you taking out time to develop yourself? If we stop to listen and learn, we will become Neanderthals. Neanderthals were bigger in size, they were more stronger, they had everything in their favor, but they just are no more there. They're just in the museums. Similarly, learning and development professionals, if you stop learning, that is the death knell. And believe you me, I have seen enough of people who were stellar at one point of time, but the problem was that they stopped learning. The day you stop learning, that is the day in which it's not the tip of the bell curve. That means you're already sliding. And once the slide starts, you can always restart, but you need to restart. Some people become complacent. A lot of people 20 years back, whom I thought at that point of time with, my childish dream to be them, because they were the only ones in front of me, I don't even know where they are today. Okay? And there are very few people who are still there. And for you listeners, two of those people who were there 20 years back and are still here are here in the webinar addressing your questions. Okay? So that is very important. Be at it. Don't stop learning, because the day you stop learning, you will become a Neanderthal and you'll probably not even get some space in some museum. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add on to that. I know we have a lot of questions. We ourselves had put up a lot of questions which we should have asked you, but at this point of time, I think let's just go forward and pay our respects to Guy and Anand. Anand is on the phone. He's not being able to log in. Murphy's Law, my laptop crashed, his connection crashed. And that's exactly what he was telling to us, before the webinar started, that I hope everything goes fine. We were talking about how all of us have got two connections and all that, and see that person has two connections, one mobile phone, and nothing is working right now. So, but I pay my homage to you, Guy, and to Anand, who's not here right now.